Welcome to the CEN show, where we present the voice of the community. The CommunityEducationNetwork.com is a platform to aid the effort of self and collective improvement. Tomorrow on Conscious Corner with host Professor Amin Ra and Joe Hembrick, we'll have guest Craig Hodges, former NBA player. They will discuss racism and the exploitation of Black athletes. I am your host, Rasaki Maskani. Tonight's topic is education, financial literacy, spirituality, and religion. Tonight's guest is Roni. I met him in 2001. We taught together in a special program designed to reform multiple F students to transition to a regular high school setting. If you were teaching in this program, you had to be a special type of teacher due to the severe dysfunctional behavior of the students. Roni is one of those type of teachers who could be effective in such a program, and he proved it when he was directly responsible for improving the continuation school's graduation rate when he served as administrator. Roni and I became very close friends over the past 20 years, and he is like a brother. He is one of the very few people I know that is straight up with you and does not hold his tongue. Good evening, Roni. Can you tell us more about yourself?
Well, I just recently turned 75 last week in the great city of Los Angeles. Saw you on my birthday, in fact. Was born and raised in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, made in New York City. Never met my dad, my biological father in life. But my mom married the only dad I ever knew when I was one. He had just got out of the war. I was a war baby, 1946. And grew up in a completely segregated community in Oklahoma City. Went to the Oklahoma City Douglas High School, which was the only high school. 95% of the blacks in Oklahoma City went to Oklahoma City Douglas. There were a few that went to a couple other schools, but got a great education. 2,000 students at the schools, 350 in my graduating class. From there, I matriculated to Howard University in Washington, D.C. with the notions of being a football player. At the time, they didn't give scholarships at HBCUs, particularly Howard and some of the ones that were known for academics. But I went there and played my freshman year, got a taste of what big time football was like because we often visited the Washington Redskins. We had season tickets to the games. And that was one of the turning parts in my educational career. After observing some Redskin practices and a few games, I knew then that didn't have a talent for the professional game. So I said, I got to start studying and developing my mind. And number one, the reason you're there was not to play football. It was to get an education. You and I both, being college athletes, we took advantage of that. And to this day, we'd probably not had that education without some athletic prowess. From there, I was the first Black accountant at Amoco Production in Tulsa, Oklahoma, what was a part of Standard Oil of Indiana. I went there in January of '69. The racial scene was so crazy. In '68, the year before, Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy had gotten killed. In '64, I met and shook hands with Bobby Kennedy at Howard University because football players were acting as bodyguards for celebrities that came on campus. I also got to hear Martin Luther King's, Junior King speak. Adam Clayton Powell, Ralph Brown. There was so many famous people at Howard that it wasn't even funny. It was just, it's been the number one HBCU in the country. And being Washington, D.C., the capital, we had a lot of international students. We even had more white students than I would have thought. But after a year there, I matriculated back to Oklahoma State University, stayed there a year and a half, ended up graduating from another HBCU, Langston University in Langston, Oklahoma, the only HBCU in Oklahoma, and the closest one in California, for that matter. From there, I went to work in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and worked there for 23 years in the oil and gas industry as a revenue accountant. first Black supervisor at the Williams Companies in accounting. But a lot of these firsts that I was, it wasn't that I was so great. I had talent, but it was timing more so than anything. You know, when the guy came to recruit me off Langston's campus to work at Amoco as their first Black accountant, my grades were crap because I had been to 3 schools and partied like rock stars, but you know, I could walk chew gum at the same time, could look him in the eye and talk to him. My grades were poor because I was partying, quite frankly. But you know, I had some academic gifts, and my grades were really good in my major, which was business administration. So I graduated with a degree in business administration with a minor in math. That's how I became a math teacher. Because when I got to Long Beach and they looked at my transcript, they said, "Hey, you have a degree in business administration, but you have a minor in math. You take 1 math course, we'll give you a certification." So that's how I ended up teaching math in Long Beach, because I thought I would be a business teacher. At any rate, that's where I met Rick Rascani. And from there, we developed a friendship based on the commonality of our everyday experience with these kids, with these troubled kids, so I'd say that. And our love for reggae music. And we were just a natural bond. We were both math teachers, so we were teaching the same kids, sharing the same lesson plans, doing things of that nature, and just became great friends and are to this day. After teaching 6 years in Long Beach, the Reed High School broke up. By then, Rascani had left and gone back to Compton. Several of our colleagues went to other middle schools and other schools, and they reformatted Reed and brought it under the adult school. When they did that, Todd Irvin was gone by then to Jordan High School, and the school that I had been working at for the past 6 years, I became the administrator. They didn't make me a principal. This is how they work us. I was a dean, which is nothing but a teacher on special assignment. So I was getting the same money as a teacher with my years of service with no additional money. But through the graces of the principal, who was my homeboy and who I went to Oklahoma City Douglas with back in the 60s, he let me work overtime at night doing supervision at 2 of the adult school campuses. So I made an additional 20 grand a year, which was better than an assistant principal, so to speak. So it all came out. It was a great experience. I had everything I needed from teaching there and being a supervisor in private industry to being an effective administrator, and I thought I was. I was a pretty stern disciplinarian. Was my main goal with my faculty and staff was to empower them to do the work. We were all friends before I got the job. We remained that way. And of course, I had some run-ins with teachers about being late and things of that nature, but I understand it's a life thing, and I covered classes and did what I could to make the place work. The thing that guys like Rascani and I have, and educators like for you too, Ahmad, because you're definitely an educator, is we just love the kids. We want more for the kids than they want for themselves. That's been the hardest aspect of me being an educator. I want more for my kids than they seem to want for themselves. But I'm not even certain that they all know what their potential is and they know what to want.
Yeah. Well, you said something interesting earlier, and I was talking to Brother Machinda, who's on here,
Mm-hmm.
and I told him that you were in the company of Martin Luther King and Malcolm X, and I said you were the only person I know that has told me that. I was
Mm-hmm.
wondering if Professor Amin Rod, did you get a chance to be around both of those individuals also?
Who's that?
Martin Luther King Jr. and Malcolm X.
No, Malcolm was assassinated, I think around 1965 or 64. Mm-hmm. And then
we were just out of high school. Yeah.
Yeah. And Martin Luther King, I was from the street. I wasn't about to be nonviolent, so I never went to none of his rallies at that time. I have more of appreciation for him once I studied his philosophy now, and I see how brave and how strong he was, and I appreciate all his work. But when I was young, I followed Malcolm's teaching when we started in community college, when we first heard his albums. Right. And then that's when, but I mean, I was in the Black movement in high school in '65. Participating in the Watts Rebellion, and then I hooked up with Young Men for Total Democracy and stuff like that, growing up in Watts and Compton. So it's a different thing. And to answer your question, no, I never met them personally.
Okay. So can you tell us a little bit about that? I know you mentioned King, but you didn't mention Malcolm.
Malcolm, I never really saw him, but like Ahmad, I was a serious admirer of him. At Howard University, which was kind of like the Harvard of HBCUs, it was probably about 90% in favor of Malcolm and 10% in favor of Martin Luther King, because we weren't trying to hear that nonviolent stuff. As I told you, Stokely Carmichael, Rap Brown, they were there. Stokely Carmichael was going to grad school when I was there. Donnie Hathaway stayed right across the hall from my homeboy. Carla Thomas was there. Right down the hall was Duke Ellington's grandson, who I won his tuition playing cards with and dominoes and had to give it back. Coaches made me give it back. But it was just so many.
So you didn't get a chance to see Malcolm X. I thought you saw
No,
him.
I didn't get a chance to see Malcolm. I got a chance to see Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy, who were both killed 4 years later.
I've been telling people you didn't saw Malcolm. I guess
No, I
was
didn't see
wrong.
Malcolm. No,
Okay.
I never got to see Malcolm. And he came, he got killed in '65. I was in Howard in '64 and '65. So by the time I got there, Malcolm was kind of under siege from the Muslims themselves.
Okay.
Rascani?
Yeah.
Our parents really, my parent, I don't know about his, because he grew up with his mother and the father that he knew, weren't into politics and weren't into consciousness. They were just workers.
Absolutely.
And they never, they weren't, into consciousness, because they out the South and they scared and they don't want
Absolutely
you to get hurt, and so they didn't have Malcolm play Malcolm albums or Martin Luther King albums.
We had to learn that on our own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my mother discouraged me from getting involved with that. She had to.
Yeah, you get killed.
Yeah, she said she saw me on national TV, on the CBS Evening News, because Howard University overtook the administration office in protest of ROTC, which was mandatory, which I had to take my freshman year. It was mandatory all over the country. If you went to college, you had to take ROTC for 2 years. Howard took over the administration building. They were the second behind Columbia, who did it first, and then we took it over. And I just happened to be standing around with some of the football players, because they would always use us to keep order when large gatherings would come. The coaches would call us and say, you guys got to kind of help out campus security. So I'm just standing there looking, and my mom saw me on the news. Boy, what are you doing? They could put you out. They could put you in jail. They could hurt you. I mean, she went off on me. And I wasn't even active. I'm just standing there, just looking to see what's going on. I ain't about to go into the building, but I'm hearing what these people are saying. Because Stokely is speaking every day. Rap Brown is speaking. They're out on the quad with huge crowds. They're in the big quad, where we ate. It's 4 women's dormitories, and that's where we all gathered to eat. They're in there talking and giving lectures. It was just a fascinating place to be. And it just opens your mind up to so many possibilities that I didn't see in Oklahoma City.
So did you saw Stokely was there at the
Yes,
campus?
he was going to grad school.
Oh, he was at Howard.
Yeah, he was at Howard. And so Rap Brown was coming through, Eldridge Cleaver before he got locked up, all kinds of different people. A lot of people, Bobby Seale, people that were involved with the Panthers, who I just absolutely loved. I mean, but did I have the courage to do that? There were no Panthers in Oklahoma City, first of all. They had some in Washington, D.C. when I was there, but they were freaking getting killed. And what they were talking about was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And then I later discovered through later readings that more than 50% of the Panthers were women. Were you aware of that?
I knew that they had a lot of women in there.
More than 50% were women. Women were in a lot of.
A lot of that took place when they had to go in exile.
Absolutely.
And all the
Absolutely.
leadership had to leave. So the women took up the leadership,
Took up the
Elaine
slack.
Brown and Kathleen Cleaver, and they recruited women, and women began to admire them. And plus the role, even though Angela never was a Panther, she was a socialist and a communist. And,
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah.
But she was involved in trying to get George G. Jackson out of prison.
Absolutely.
And she was on the run. She could have led some black women stronger. But anyway, Elaine Brown and Kathleen Cleaver took on leadership roles, and that infused. But 80% of the women, 80% women make up 80% of the churches. So, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
80% of black school teachers. Right? Yeah. Maybe more.
Yeah.
All right. So let's ask you a few questions here, Ronnie. Okay, you spent years in Tulsa, Oklahoma. What do you know about the Tulsa Race Massacre of 1921?
Give you some background on that. I graduated from an all-black high school, graduated from an HBCU in the state of Oklahoma. In both schools, I had to take Oklahoma history, a year of Oklahoma history in high school, and in Langston, 1 semester of Oklahoma history, which I took my very last semester of college. Never once was a Tulsa Race Massacre. I didn't even learn about it until I was a college graduate. They started a commission in 1996 in Oklahoma to recognize it. 75 years after the riot happened. And the report didn't come out until 2001, saying that what it was, calling a spade, that it was a race massacre. From a historical perspective, right after it happened, 2 weeks after it happened, a grand jury was convened in Tulsa, and they charged the blacks with starting it. Of course, because a group of blacks, World War I veterans, they heard that they had this black boy, Dick Rowland, who was 19 and owned an elevator and supposedly assaulted a white elevator operator. That's how it all got started. So they heard they were going to lynch him. And as blacks throughout the South did, when they heard about lynchings, any prominent blacks, and there was always been black men with money, even during slavery and land and a little bit of power. So they all went to the courthouse, which was where Greenwood lies in Tulsa is 2 good blocks from the Williams Companies, the biggest building in the state of Oklahoma where I worked for 16 and a half years. A 50-story tower building, 2 blocks away is Greenwood. So they go down to the courthouse, which is right downtown, maybe 6 blocks away, to support the brother to keep him from lynching him. Well, the authorities at the time, the sheriff, they deputized all these white men who had showed up to lynch him. He deputized them, gave them guns, then they went down to Greenwood and started shooting black people. That's what happened.
And they set everything on fire.
Set everything on fire. And you know how they also got old World War I planes and were flying through the 35 block area, dropping bombs. Now, mind you, it might have been 25, 30 of us with guns who were trying to shoot back. They were killed instantly, literally. And so they were just people running, babies, kids, old people, they just shoot them. That's what that was about.
Wow.
And then 2 weeks later, they convened a grand jury and charged the black guys who came to the courthouse, who, by the way, left. The sheriff came out, 2,000 white folks there, a handful of them, 50 or 60, shit, they looked at the numbers, they went back to Greenwood. No sooner they got back, here they come. The sheriff deputized all of the white folks who showed up, boom, shakalaka.
Wow. That was something.
So you talking about Black Wall Street, they owned everything. They had their own school system. They had their own police and fire departments. They had their own water and light companies. Of course, they were leasing the utilities and stuff from the white folks, but it's right in downtown Tulsa, literally. So it's right there. So they had all of the infrastructure ready for Greenwood. But you got to understand, Oklahoma was completely segregated. I never went to school with a white person until I went to college. I didn't see white people in my neighborhood because I lived in completely black neighborhoods. And it was, oh, and did I feel bad being segregated when I was coming up as a kid? I didn't know no different. We could go downtown and shop, but not until I was a senior in high school could we even go to a restaurant. They had one bathroom in downtown Oklahoma City for us at a Casa drugstore that was filthy and a nasty water fountain. But we could go down there and shop and spend our money, but we couldn't go to any of the restaurants and eat anywhere except on the east side of Oklahoma City. But that was going on in a lot of places in this country, particularly in the South. But, and it was different in LA, but it was racism going on there too, like it is now today. You agree?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay, thanks, man. We both taught in some program in the same program for at least 5 years, going back to the T9 that you had mentioned earlier. How was that experience, and what is your observation of education in the U.S. in general?
That experience was great. I like working with underprivileged or disadvantaged or kids who come from lower socioeconomic circles. I don't think that there's a such thing as a bad kid. I just think that they come from bad surroundings. I know from working my last 6 years of my career at EPHS, where I'm doing one-on-one with kids rather than a classroom setting. The hardest core kid one-on-one is a cool kid because he don't have the audience to act out. You're just dealing with him. They feel and they know if you care about them, even though guys like you and I wouldn't put up with a lot of BS, but they knew, and the kids know themselves, and they love us from the standpoint that discipline is love, and they're not getting that at home. So they didn't look up to us in one way wanting to be like us, but we were kind of like surrogate father figures. And I know you can elaborate on that, Armin. I mean, you know, particularly with kids coming to a university away from their parents, and you're dealing with these kids, you were kind of a surrogate father figure, quasi-educator, quasi, you know, possible role model, but not really. They just couldn't see themselves being us. So one of the exercises that I did at the school to try to separate things from just the regular school, they kept telling us in Long Beach, try to relate what you're doing to real world situations. So I'd always have a class. We had a crazy little class called, when we were doing that T9, math, English, and then academic skills or academic success, kind of like special ed, but not like special ed, or they had another little fancy name for it. And I had each kid to write 2 papers, one on his dream job, one on a job to make some money on a real job. 90% of my Black boys and Hispanic boys wanted to be either soccer players or NBA players. Nobody wanted to be an NFL player, or a rapper. That was all of the dream jobs. The real jobs were mechanics, work in the post office, never a job that required an education, which was just appalling to me. But and then I said, what's the likelihood that you will get the dream job or the real job in the real world? And they were so delusional that they really thought they were going to be NBA players, 5'9", at an alternative school and can't even hoop. And you saw many of them every day. You dealt with that at Compton. 5'9", can't hoop, at an alternative school, not even playing in high school, and you're gonna go to the NBA? Are you kidding me? You know, are you gonna be a rapper? If you be a rapper, let me hold your money, because you don't even know how to count. So but it kind of gave them an extreme. Okay, here's my dream job over here. Deep down, I know I ain't gonna be that, but I'm gonna kind of hold out for that dream because it's glamorous and they make money. But the real job, to get that real job and to be functional and be successful, or to be kids always admire my cars and my clothes. I said, to get that, education is the key. I mean, I'm not a math teacher here trying to get a check. I'm trying to show you, I don't give a damn if you don't learn any math, but I want you to leave my classroom with some life lessons to have a basic understanding of how to manage your own damn money. I don't care if you don't know how to do algebra, I really don't. Or geometry, that wild stuff we teach. I want you to have the basics where you can manage your own money and be able to make financially literate decisions. And our people are really not good at making financially literate decisions. The first one you got to do, some part every dime you make, you got to save. We spend up all our money. I've been guilty of it for years. I didn't stop spending up all my money until I was in my 40s. And I had money, but well, I was wild and crazy and living a good life. But it dawned on me in my 40s that what Blacks don't do and what was taken away from those folks in the riot at Greenwood was generational wealth, passing wealth down to our kids. You have a home. Something happened to you and Keisha Roscani, you have a home. You have some assets. That's generational wealth that you're passing on to your kids. So many of our kids will not be the beneficiaries of generational wealth because most of them were renting. Most of them didn't own anything. Had a car, it was heavily, just generational wealth is the key to the Black man succeeding. Black man still has 10% of the wealth of the 10% of the wealth of the white man. That's just, that can't work. And the key, reparations. They got to give us some money at some point. They're going to give up some money in Tulsa. The descendants will probably be dead before it happens, but they have plenty of descendants and relatives. They need to give some of that money back. Here we go again with financial literacy. Suppose we get a president like Biden with some stroke, with some power, who happens to have the Senate in his pocket. What he could do, and that's going to happen in the future. So suppose they said, okay, every Black in America, we're going to just give you a lowball number like 10 grand. Well, of that 10 grand a piece for the approximately, we're 13% of the population, what is it, 35, 40 million Blacks in this country? 90% of it is going to be spent with white folks because we don't own the stuff that we want. We don't own houses. We don't own Mercedes. There's a few of us with dealerships, but that's few and far between. So the stuff that they're going to buy, and then all of the junkies are over OD in 3 months. I mean, what would we do with the money? How many of us have the financial literacy to say, let's invest it back in the community? That's why Black Wall Street worked, because we couldn't, even the people that didn't, even the Blacks that were not a part of Black Wall Street and were living in other parts of Tulsa, did all their shopping in Black Wall Street. Because we didn't take our money to the white folks. That's why it prospered and thrived. It was worth $25 million in 1921. That's a lot of damn money. That's generational wealth that would have been infinitesimally larger if it would have got passed down to their descendants and would have broadened and enlivened the whole Black community, not just in Tulsa, but the whole state of Oklahoma. And that stuff and that would have spread. They had many Wall Streets in many other cities in the country. And believe me, that Tulsa Race Massacre was not the only one. One of the worst ever was in Chicago, a fairly urban city. I got a little list of several different of those. And of course, it was happening all over the South. But the one in Tulsa was just brutal, and so many people killed at one time. Now, as far as tying that all back to my experience working in alternative education, it has been extremely satisfying. It's frustrating because of the kids' reluctance to really buckle down and learn, but they had not been taught. They came to us with no study habits. We had kids that we were teaching math, Roscani, who needed a multiplication table. You know what I'm saying? I got, and then I found that out when I got to teach and read. I got juniors and seniors don't know their times tables past 5. That's not That's stuff you learn in elementary school by rote. You memorize it. So we were working from a huge deficit in their knowledge and their learning ability, and then their ability to pay attention. They didn't pay attention and they acted out because they were so far behind in many cases. You agree?
Yes,
They
I
just
do.
didn't know what was going on. You know, you try to teach a kid algebra who can't do basic math, that's a difficult task, but you know, we made it happen. We made it happen. So it was a beautiful experience. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would have rather been at Reed than Poly because we were where we were needed the most. And guys like us were really needed in that program. If you notice, we had a lot of males in that program because most alternative schools are predominantly male. We had the highest percentage of Black males on staff than anybody in Long Beach. Think about it, Rico. Ross County. We had the highest percentage of Black males in any staff in Long Beach because that's where our clients were. Great experience.
Now you touched on financial literacy, and I wanted to get a strategy that you think that's effective to help people kind of like manage their money better.
Well,
Black people,
the first thing is saving, putting some money to the side. You know, when I bought my house in Long Beach, my condo in 2008, that doesn't happen unless I finally buckle down and get a 403B and start putting $400 a month in there. That $400 a month, when I started doing it, almost killed me because I never effectively saved in my life. And I was 54 when I moved to California. I never effectively saved before. But when I got the dean's job and started making that extra 20 grand a year, that gave me some incentive and the extra cash. I said, I got to do something with this money. So I started saving $400 a month. That was the start of my financial literacy. If I had done that 20 years earlier, I would have retired with $500,000 in my 403B. So that's what financial literacy is about. The phenomenon that you've heard of called compound interest and getting 403Bs and making compound interest is just phenomenal. It's just a phenomenon, but you got to be able to put the money up, be able to continue to contribute and leave it alone. And that's what financial literacy is all about. You have to build some wealth. You just cannot, but so many of us, particularly those of us that don't have degrees, the difference in the degrees, you know, high school diploma versus college diploma, we make twice what they do, particularly after we've been in the workforce for a while. So financial literacy is also about getting education. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to graduate from college. You just got to be willing to work. You agree?
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to be a rocket scientist. I was not a rocket scientist. You were not a rocket scientist. But we have above average intelligence and we're willing to work and had the discipline to do the work. You know, getting through college is not about brains as much more as it's about discipline. Just being disciplined enough to do the assignments, disciplined enough to go to class, disciplined enough to pay attention and to study and pass the test. It's all about memory and spitting it out on a given day. And that's discipline, which our kids, where did I get my discipline from? Where did you get yours from, Mama? Where did you get yours from, Rascani? A lot of it came from within me, but a heck of a lot of it was from my mom. From my mom. My role models when I was a kid going to an all-Black high school were my coaches and teachers. Those are my role models, and I just wanted to be like them. I never really wanted to be a teacher, but I damn sure wanted a degree. My mom's, one of her best friends was a dentist, and another one of her best friends was a lawyer. I just wanted to be a professional man. I didn't want to be like my dad, who come home, worked at the packing house. He worked for Armor Meat Company. Come home and be so tired, he'd sit there in the chair for an hour before he'd have the strength to get up and take off those dirty, bloody clothes and go take a shower. I didn't want that for me. So my motivation came from that, just watching my dad and my uncles and all my friends' dads and uncles struggle because they had no, I knew a few relatives and a few folks who saved money, but for the most part, that we couldn't save. We're trying to keep the lights on. But whatever level you at, you got to put something back to start building some wealth for the future. I'm retired now at 75, worked all these years. I'm better financial shape than I've ever been in my life. Have more money than ever. Just because of some planning. For the 20 years I was in Long Beach, we put money to the side. And you don't have to start doing it as a kid, but you need to. You need to start doing it as early as possible. You and I both bought houses pretty late in life. You agree?
Yeah.
We should have been in houses at 30s. How do you build wealth? You buy property. That's the easiest way in the world to build wealth. But you and I both know 80-90% of our kids' parents are renting. You agree?
Oh yeah.
You can't build wealth renting. You got to do everything you can. If I were to play my life over again, I would have been in some kind of house by 30 that I owned. Flipped it and got a bigger house. Flipped it and got a bigger house. That's how people move up. That's how, when I met Sydney Gordon, Sydney was living on the water in Long Beach in a fourplex that's worth $10 million now. And his wife ran me and Sydney off there. We stayed down there 6 months, maybe. She ran us off. Sydney tried to explain to her that, baby, just let's hold on to this. Now sell it so I can get my money and get away from you. Hold on to this for a year. Because Cameron Diaz had moved right next door and renovated her place. This place is going to double in value in a year. He tried to get that over to an educated Black woman, and she wasn't trying to hear it. But we have to build wealth to expand us. That's one thing I've always admired about Jesse Jackson, even though he's a preacher, and I ain't real high on preachers. The Rainbow Coalition was about economics. Until we get a slice of the pie, we're going to be irrelevant. Till we get off our asses and go to the polls and vote, we're going to be irrelevant. Donald, if just 5% more of the Black people in the country would have voted, less than 5%, there is no Donald Trump. Again, that's all about financial literacy because politics is eventually about your pocket. People, they vote about abortion, they vote about immigration, they vote about civil rights, but true educated voters vote their pockets. Again, financial literacy. We must be aware of being financially literate. So my dad told me early in life, if you can, boy, keep $100 in your pocket or so, because it's hard for a Black man to go somewhere and write a check. I haven't written a check probably since I was out at any establishment since I was maybe 25, because they want 2 or 3 different IDs. White cat come through here, buy something, write a check, show them his driver's license. They want my driver's license, a major credit card, and that's insulting to me as a Black man, because I know it's a different standard. But then if I'm the owner of that place, and I don't know any better, and I see a Black man, I just think of a man who is not economically well off, which is usually the case, and he might give me a high check. I see it from the other side, but we're a little more fortunate than most of our brothers in the fact that we got an education. But we're still Black men, so we're treated like the masses.
Yeah. Okay, man. Thanks for that. I got one last question before I get to the panel. Can you contrast spirituality and religion?
Well, that's a tough one. I was in a Cocaine Anonymous for 3.5 years. And I went to meetings on a regular basis to free myself from the most powerful drug on the planet, or one of the most powerful. And I discovered when I first joined and I looked at the 12 steps, there was so much like the 10 Commandments. I said, wait a minute, I didn't come in here to go to church. And we all spoke of a higher power. God was never used in those walls, a higher power. And we all believed that there was some higher power, we just didn't call him God. Some did. Probably maybe a third of the people that were in the groups were religious, but most of us who true drug addicts weren't particularly religious. We didn't, our only God was the drugs itself or pleasure. So it was easy, it was difficult for me, it hit me in the face. At that point, when I got clean, I became even more spiritual because I had a lot of time on my hands from not using drugs. So I started reading up even more about Egyptians and the foundation of the name Amun-Ra and all of the origins of the Ankh and just reading up on stuff and becoming more aware. Of course, I read Malcolm stuff, then I read Martin Luther King stuff and contrasting the two and seeing the differences. But you know, I'm a kind of guy, as are most educated people, we need some proof. And there's absolutely zero proof. I don't care how religious you are or how much you believe. There's no proof. And then you want me to worship the God of my oppressors? Well, no Jesus in Africa, where we came from. But there's the white man trying to make Africans look like heathens and worshiping pagan gods. Well, your God is just as pagan as the next God. But you know, that's a difficult thing to discuss. You know, when people talk to me about religion, the first thing I say is, in the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And that Genesis 1:1. The Bible goes back, what, 2,000 years, 6,000 max. The earth is 4.25 billion years old. Please explain that to me. I've asked many religious people that. Please explain that to me. In the beginning, God created heaven and earth. And earth is 4.2 billion years old. And religion goes back 2,000 years, maybe 6,000 at the best. We found people in Homo sapiens that were 30, 40, 50,000 years old. But the Bible, the man didn't get created till 2,000 years ago. What about evolution? What about the Big Bang Theory? I mean, it's just kind of tough for me to accept religion intellectually. And then it's made even tougher by being raised in the African American Methodist Church for the first 18 years of my life. And it's just so much hypocrisy going on inside the church. The people are talking the talk, but they're not walking the walk. Well, between the hypocrisy and just the absolute complete twisting of any known facts, you know, the Bible was written 200 years after Christ died, supposedly, and translated from 100 different languages. And then it got to the King James Version, and King James modified all of these writings to make it palatable for the rich to stay in power. And by the way, King James was a pedophile and a homosexual and fathered many, many children, all while being this. And this is the Bible that you want me to go for? This is the Bible that also says it's okay to beat your slaves? Get out of here with that, man. I'm not trying to hear that. But I don't, like I said, my best friends here are very religious. We just don't discuss it. They know how I feel. I have one that bugs me from time to time. They know how I feel. I know how they feel. I don't have a problem with them being religious. I love them just as much, but I can't because I got to give me some facts. What is an agnostic? An agnostic is a person who, I'm not a complete atheist. I just don't complete believe that there is no higher power. He's just not the God that we celebrate in the United States. That's just my theory. And millions and millions or more like me, because religion is losing hundreds of thousands of Americans every year. Our young people, these millennials, they're not religious. They're not buying that. They're not buying it at all. The biggest knock on religion I have right now is that it put Donald Trump in the White House. Because he won the evangelical, all the Christians want to vote for Donald Trump. Because he's against abortion. Are you kidding me? He's like the Antichrist. And a man who's never gone to church a day in his life except to celebrate some sort of event or be seen, who stands up there in Washington after they sprayed and tear gas protesters with the Bible upside down. Get out of here. But white evangelicals put him in office. White evangelicals are the backbone of the Republican Party. Get out of here with that, man. Get out of here with that. I'm just not trying to hear it. But folks who do believe in God, and it's all about belief, it ain't about proof. I just got to believe in facts. I got to believe in stuff I can see and touch and feel. Spirituality is, my thing is, my good friend that I worked for at the Dole School, I was the principal, Fitzgerald Jones, used to always say, you live a better life than most of my folks who go to church because you try to do the right thing and you try to help people. The old golden rule, I don't know if that's religious or not, doing to others as you would have them doing to you, and always help people. That's the motto and the creed I've always lived by. To give makes me a better person. I love, as you well know, Roscoe, I love to give. I love to put people down. I love to help people. I love to spread knowledge. I love to spread the wealth that I've been blessed to have because my mom was able enough to send me to college and I was able enough to get through it. So I try to live a good life. I try to treat people right, and I'm deeply spiritual, but I'm just not religious. There is room for both in our society.
Well, I'll tell you this, you are a very generous person. You can go to my closet. I still have clothes that you given me from years ago.
I got many friends like that. Many.
And you shared so much clothes. I was able to share with other people, man. And
your
yeah,
brothers, yeah.
Yeah, very charitable person and very
But
good.
that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
You got to help each other, and we got to uplift each other. And so often, that's gangs. I understand gangs on the one hand, but I don't understand why we kill each other. I understand guys when I used to talk to my guys about it in school all the time. I understand why y'all get in gangs because y'all have fractured family units, and this is a family. But it's just two ways you can end up: shot or in the penitentiary.
Mm-hmm.
That's madness. Neither one of those is a good outcome to me.
Yeah.
And you're killing people who look just like you. Crips is killing Crips, Bloods is killing Bloods, or they killing each other. Hispanics are killing other Hispanics. Yeah. What are you doing? The white man is just looking at us and laughing.
Yeah, I remember going to school in the early '80s, and we had a primarily Crip school.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's funny because Compton is a blood town, right?
Well, it was Pyrus and Crips, but Compton High School was Crips.
Okay.
So we had fractions of Crip gangs at our school from different neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Since they didn't have any rival gangs to fight because no Pyrus wanted to come up there and be at this.
So they started fighting each other.
They fought each other, and then you would once in a while get somebody affiliated with the rival gang, which was the Pyrus. They just started. Mm-hmm. See, they started calling it Bloods in the media. It was Pyrus and Crips, and then they changed the name to Blood somehow, and that seemed like that was media. But if it would be one person that showed up at that school that was affiliated with the Pyrus, all the Crip games would come together just to beat up on one person. So yeah. it was very counterproductive and
it's madness.
Insane. Yeah, it was insane.
It's madness. It's just like in Long Beach. Long Beach is Crip town. You got the Insanes and the Bakers. And they fighting each other. And they're both Crips. I mean, what sense does that make?
And
you fighting over territory that you written. You don't even own it.
Yeah, that's
this is my hood. Your mama renting, dog.
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, but man, I appreciate you answering all those questions, man. It's very good information. Now we
Man,
want we wa-
it's my pleasure.
we
And I
want to
have one
go
request.
we want to go to the panel because they may have some questions and comments. So I'm gonna start off with Sister Azizi. Sister Aziza. Sister Aziza. Do you have questions and comments for Brother Ross Ronnie? She still there?
Yes. Oh, sorry. No, I had to unlock the phone. I'm sorry for the delay. Yeah, I was gonna say thank you for sharing the information about the race massacre. Cause myself personally, I just learned about it, baby. I'm gonna say less than a week ago. Some feeds came across my YouTube, and the survivor, let me get her name, Viola Fletcher, who was 107 years old, was one of the oldest living survivors, and she was giving her testimony recorded, and they broadcast it, and I was able to catch the feed on YouTube. So,
Fascinating. That's some fascinating stuff.
and yeah, so just ironic that that was one of the topics that you were speaking about, because I was going to do some more research in it, because like I said, it was brand new to me. And also, I think that's cool that you got to you know talk about your experiences from the past, today, and how it made you feel. And I want to just thank you for all the different knowledges that you dropped on us today. And I was glad I could be listening and witnessing of your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hopefully Ross County will include me in some more panels in the future on other subjects and topics.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah,
Right.
definitely. Thanks, Sister Aziza. Brother Mashinda.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah, I've just been an observer, to the quiet observer tonight. Again, I like to mimic what brother sister Zizi said. Thank you for sharing. Everyone who has spoke tonight. Very interesting. There's always something interesting that you learn when you chime in the CEN forum. At least that's what I think. It's a good thing. And brother Ross Ronnie, keep doing what you're doing. You look good. You say you're 7'5". I said, wow,
75.
man, you stay in motion. You're doing well.
Yeah.
Look good. And again, thank you for sharing the information. Like I say, I always find it enlightening. And Brother Ra and all you guys. And you guys have a good evening.
You too. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, Professor Amin Ra.
Again, first of all, I want to thank you again, Roski, for putting this together, this platform for us to share ideas and speak truth to our people, make sense out of the molders of truth, the destroyers of truth, the misrepresentatives of truth, and the masters of trickeration, and they give people the illusion of inclusion and confusion. And it's good to meet Ross Ronnie in person again, well over the Zoom, but seeing him, because there's so much you can feel from you, brother. Your love for what you've been through, the good and the bad. You learn from the bad.
Absolutely.
To help shape you to the good, and sharing it with the young people. Like you saying, I like the part where you say, your biggest test in life is not the algebra test, but the test of making it through life.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you have to set aside some time in your class after you cover the subject matter and give them that sacred knowledge, that mystery system knowledge, that
survival knowledge.
Sometimes they call it from the 7 seas, somebody say from the burning sands, wherever. But the important thing is you try to stimulate them to think and build a blueprint for their lives and start constructing a life for the future.
Right.
Going to Howard University was a blessing, and going to Langston and going to all the Black schools that you went to, and
Absolutely a blessing.
it was a blessing, and you know, because there was a lot of love. It was smaller.
Mm-hmm.
You know, segregation, and it really what led to why there were flourishing Black towns, not just in Greenwood, but throughout, because they were segregated.
Yeah, we had over 20 Black towns in Oklahoma alone.
Yeah, and they were segregated, and when you segregated, you learn to be self-sufficient.
Absolutely.
And that's why the money stayed in the neighborhood, and that's why, you know, funeral homes, churches, restaurants, little markets, and you know, they flourished because, and they could get, you know, they work with each other, and that helped. You know, when you can retain that memory, that historical retention of your experiences, it helps go with the academic preparation. You know, not only did you learn how to teach math, but you learn how to teach people to use their senses and to think. You know, the massacres of Black people in Greenwood, there was massacres all over. If you do a chronological line of time, in 1921, there was, you know, in Chicago, through all over the South, Mississippi, Louisiana, you can't find the bodies that they threw in the rivers and the lakes.
Absolutely.
And the various forms of other intimidations. It's you know, it's good that they're focusing on Greenwood. I always taught, you know, when I started in Black Studies, I did show shared information about them dropping the bomb on a Black town. You know, they called it Black Wall Street and things of that nature, and Tulsa, Oklahoma. But you know, it's amazing that you find people who have not heard about it, because a lot of people from Oklahoma and from Tulsa weren't taught it, and a lot of people they were intimidated to talk about it, to suppress, because see, there's no immunity for murder.
None.
People talking about reparations. They still arresting Nazis for the Holocaust in Germany.
Absolutely.
And they should open up all those cases where they bury Black people in mass graves without names and anything. And some of the people, they put 90-year-old Nazis in prison, but they won't go and look at those white people.
That ain't gonna happen, not in America.
In Oklahoma, that participated. They got a roster in the library of everybody that was in the Ku Klux Klan and during that period.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so you
and
know,
the law
so
enforcement people.
They can find the people, and they can also trace the businesses that they built upon and stole the wealth and the land and built property on and ran a freeway through to make sure that the town didn't come back. They had 30 blocks of Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood. Now they only have 1 block.
Yep.
And they
That's
talk
real
about
tough.
the one.
And you know, and when it started rebounding up, Brother Ra, you know, they start rebuilding in the 40s and the 50s. So what do? They said they're gonna run a railroad through there.
Yeah.
And there is a railroad that goes right down by the corner of Greenwood and Orchard. There's railroad tracks. Freight trains making all kinds of noise that people couldn't even hardly sleep. So yeah, it's ongoing. What they've done is ongoing.
Yeah, that's their way of making sure that you never get the evidence, and that, you know, you try to make it make them forget. But there's a lot of parallels that you talked about that really, as an educator, you have to love to teach.
You gotta love it.
You got to love teaching.
Yep.
And be a teacher if you don't love teaching.
Yeah.
And care about teaching, not just the academics, as you had pointed out, and that's what I love about your presentation, is that you taught them about life, and you taught them about, the values, but what made that good was that what you went through with the various forms of street life, because you have a balance.
Mm-hmm.
So you know what the streets was like, and what like what they say, how it is, but you also taught them how it ought to be.
Yes, sir.
Because even though they may leave school and go home to how it really is,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes foster home, placement home, sometimes sleeping in a car or sleeping 4 and 5 in one room, and poor people,
Mm-hmm.
or in juvenile hall or some situation. But you also gave them an aspiration to dream and to think about a better life, and that you have to work.
You gotta work.
And that's what you kept putting into that night. You have to have the discipline, the work, and the motivation. And you were trying to give them motivation and the academic skills to work. So that was good. It's so much that you touched upon, and we want to hear from you, of course, but there's just so much I can just elaborate on, because
Absolutely.
I had a similar experience.
You got shared experiences.
Similar experience you
Yeah,
had.
we came at the same time.
Yeah, and so it's a different. You have to re-educate yourself. A lot of the stuff I learned and to get my degree, I used it to get the degree, but then when I got ready to teach, I had to go and study, like you said, you read up on Malcolm, you read up on Martin, you read up on these things that they didn't even discuss at home or in school. That's one reason they didn't want people to have Black studies, African studies, because they would come up with the Greenwoods and the Allenworth and the various forms of historical struggles, and what Harriet Tubman was about, and what Social Truth was about, what Nat Turner was about, and all those type of things. And when it comes to religion, the Europeans have corrupted religion so bad that people, they abuse it. They said God is the one that told them to kill all the Indians and take the land, called it the manifest destiny.
And that's
Israel over there killing the Palestinians, talking about it's in the Bible that we're supposed to do this. So abusers of religion. Hitler had his symbol was flying crosses. That's what the swastika is.
Yeah.
And South Africa was supposed to be a Christian state. So in America, they keep talking about Trump big lie. This country's a big lie.
Oh, absolutely.
The whole country.
Absolutely.
And so it's just good to hear you and I took in a lot. Got a bunch of notes because I was just including everything that you said, and I don't really have no questions. I just like to just amplify what you're saying because and bear witness to it. Being a product of Watts Compton and from the South through my parents, and doing a lot of things. You was hanging out, Superfly at night and Malcolm in the daytime. That type of life. Trying to
That's the
get
life
the jet set. And then you get older, you get wiser. You slow down and you think. You think about all your friends that died early. You think about those that aren't doing good. And, and some of them came from good families and had more than you
Yeah,
to work with.
absolutely.
You'd be surprised at the kids that are doing things that got parents that had everything they wanted.
Oh yeah.
But they just decided to do things. And there are people with neurological problems. Mental health is an issue.
And it's a serious
Well,
issue.
we got to fight with these youngsters in school. The times has changed. Automation technology, where television kidnapped them and was a babysitter for the parent. Now cyberspace is. And video games are. And they don't play and develop a human relationship. They're more attached to gadgets.
Yep.
They go to sleep with their gadget more than they go to sleep with their lover. It's a different way of communicating. But the beauty of you and Roscani is that y'all went through that, and you had the ability to reach these kids through all that cobweb of confusion. But I'm really enjoying the presentation. So, go ahead and elaborate some more. But I take Malcolm's position on religion. I don't argue with people about religion because some of them have had experiences where they feel that religion got them through. Some of our great historians and great liberators were religious.
Absolutely.
Malcolm was a minister. King was a minister. Farrakhan's a minister. Dr. Karenga's parents were Christians and his daddy was a preacher, and he learned all about spirituality. So there's a difference between spirituality and organized religion.
Absolutely.
And we came here with a deep spirituality as African people.
Right.
And they got us to use it and to take our belief system into believing their belief system. And with white gods, white symbols of God and all of that. But going to Howard University with Francis Cresswell, Chancellor Williams, and all those great teachers that came out of there and that great legacy, you're ahead of most of the Black people.
Changed my life, man.
That's about it. Roscani.
Well, I appreciate that, Professor Ra. And I appreciate, all the good information Roni provided for us. So we're going to conclude. So Amin Ra, you want to tell us about tomorrow on your show, Conscious Corner?
Well, first of all, again, thank you for sending us the platform. And I like the forum, Community Education Network. I think that's it says it all. But tomorrow, we're having Craig Hodges, who was one of the first to be whiteballed out of sports because of his fight for justice for Black people, way before Calmanac. And besides the people that participated in the 1968 revolt, we're going to be discussing exploitation and racism in sports with Black athletes. And there's 3 levels of Black athletes, as you know. There's amateurs, there's collegiate, and then there's professional. And you say, well, what do you mean exploited and they're making the money that they make? Well, Black people are exploited. They're not exploited because they're athletes. They're exploited because they're Black people. There are athletes that can't even sleep in the same hotel with the whites when they were starting, and they don't have the same justice. You always hear about a Black athlete getting stopped by driving while Black in his BMW or his Benz or his car, or at the same time, a lot of other issues they face. And as long as any of the Black people are abused with racism, they are, because they're Black before they was athletes.
Absolutely.
And just because you're an athlete don't mean they won't lynch you and they won't shoot you in the back running. So we're gonna talk about a lot of those things. And I just saw where they're gonna be talking about race normaty in NFL. The NFL is getting rid of a policy where many of the black former players tried to get workman comp and saying that they had brain damage from hitting so much and psychological going through depressions and blackouts and things. And they would use this, well, you were like that before you started playing, you know? and deny them their claim. So they have had a $50 billion settlement. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But Craig Hodges wrote a book, The Long Shot, and when they won the NBA championship with the Chicago Bulls. But his activism started at Cal State Long Beach. He took over the Black Athletic Association, which I had started when I was a student, and he changed it to the African Student Association. But he came up in Black Studies under the teaching of me, Dr. Karang, and he gave us a lot of credit in his book. And he's doing a documentary, which he's going to interview me and Dr. Maulana Karanga. But he's going to talk about his book. He's going to talk about, I'm going to try to get him to talk about when he went to get to meet the president, which was Senior Bush. They told him don't wear his dashiki.
Yeah, I remember that so well.
And he wore it anyway.
He wore it anyway.
And it was beautiful. It was over $200 dashiki. And then he gave Bush a note saying that, you know, treat our people better. You know?
Yeah, I'm totally aware of it. I so admired him for what he did. And he had many NBA years left.
And then he criticized a lot of the Chicago Bulls professional players at that time for not doing as much as they could. Now that a lot of them are doing things.
Yeah.
We got to give them credit for those that woke up what LeBron is doing, what a lot of the players, how they got involved in Black Lives Matter and how they spending money, how some of them paid for some of the players, some of the people who they had fines in Florida so they can vote. And some of them forced the NBA to open up the arenas so that they could have voting places. It was a lot of good things that happened that some of them are doing. So we're going to talk about all of that tomorrow night. And there's supposed to be some other professional athletes, college athletes that's going to share their experiences too. How could you play for the University of Kentucky with Mitch McConnell, your senator? You know,
Moscow.
We're going to rock and roll. We're going to rock and roll.
That should be interesting.
All right. I hope everybody tune in.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that. Well, Ronnie, I appreciate you, man. And
okay. What time does the meeting with Craig start tomorrow?
6
At
same time.
6 o'clock. I was a big admirer of his when he did what he did. I was also a great admirer of that shot. His shot was so beautiful and pure.
Yeah.
I was a big fan of his, just personally, his connection with Long Beach State, and just great player who sacrificed his career for his beliefs.
Yeah, he won that. He was the 3-point All-Star game champion.
I saw almost every game. I'm a huge NBA basketball fan. I was always a football player before. As far as TV, basketball is the perfect game, the absolute perfect game. And I saw mostly all of his play. He should have played 4 or 5 more years with the talent he had. Easy. Easy. So he's just like my frat brother. Like to give a shout out to Colin Kaepernick, who's a Kappa just like I am.
Yeah.
He sacrificed his career.
Yeah.
For what's right.
Yeah.
Whether he's religious or not, just doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. He took
brave man.
All right.
Okay, all right, so
tomorrow.
All right. Thanks a lot. And Sister Aziza, thanks. Professor Amin Ra. Each one teach one. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.